The hearing to consider the nomination of Russell Vought to be Director of the Office of Management and Budget will come to order. Since taking office 4 years ago, President Biden has added $8.4 trillion to our national debt. To be fair, the Trump administration added $7.8 trillion to the national debt. This is truly a bipartisan problem. To put the pace of our federal government spending into perspective, for the last 8 years, our government has added, on average, $1 trillion to the national debt every 6 months. Now, for the first time in history, servicing our debt has come at a cost that is more than our entire defense budget. Interest now exceeds our military budget. This isn't sustainable. The Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, is the largest office within the executive branch, with the primary responsibility of producing a workable budget for the president. Unfortunately, over the past 4 years, OMB failed to address our nation's fiscal situation and, in fact, took actions that accelerated the country's fiscal crisis. Make no mistake, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in Congress are also complicit in this reckless approach to spending by refusing to put any meaningful guardrails or parameters on taxpayers' money. For example, each year I put forth a budget, a plan to balance the budget in 5 years. Last year, I put forth a 6-penny plan. Started out as a 1-penny plan. You could cut 1% over 5 years and balance your budget. Last year was 6% because of the explosion of money that happened during COVID. Every single Democrat opposed this and 7 Republicans. But we got a big chunk of the Republican caucus on that bill. But instead of taking advantage of an opportunity for fiscal responsibility in 2025, we've added another $1 trillion to our deficit in 4 months since I introduced my budget. Reports out today were over $700 billion in debt in the last 3 months. For years, I've been beating the drum on waste in our government. Each year, I release a Festivus report highlighting the new and egregious examples of waste I found. Just last month, I released the most recent iteration of this report, which identified over $1 trillion in unnecessary and often absurd government spending, such as $400,000 to determine whether lonely rats seek cocaine more than happy rats, $3 million for girl-centric climate action in Brazil, $10 billion in maintaining, leasing, and furnishing empty federal government buildings, $12 million for a pickleball complex in Las Vegas, $4.8 million for social media influencers in Ukraine, $20 million on teaching Pakistan, Vietnam, Colombia, and Brazil how to use fertilizer, $2 million to New York University to study kids looking at Facebook ads about food. The list goes on and on. It is beyond time for our federal government to start taking responsibility for this reckless and irresponsible approach to spending. While I was disappointed to see our nation's annual budget deficit grow during President Trump's first term, I remain optimistic about President Trump's nominee, Russell Vought. Mr. Vought has been a consistent advocate for fiscal sanity and has continually suggested strategies to decrease excess spending. The director of OMB plays a pivotal role in our economy, especially now. Our government is over $36 trillion in debt, and the Congressional Budget Office predicts an average of about $2 trillion per year for the next 10 years. No end in sight. We need someone with the strength of character, like Mr. Vought, to put the foot down, to put the hammer down and say enough's enough. Mr. Vought is well qualified for this role, having previously served as the director in both an official and acting capacity, and as well as being the deputy director. As director, Mr. Vought will be tasked with spearheading the president's budget. He will also be tasked with overseeing agency use of funds, coordinating agency activities across the federal government, and working with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's Department of Government Efficiency. However, unless the new administration has the courage to tackle entitlement reform, the national debt will continue to explode. I support Mr. Vought's nomination, and I remain hopeful that the incoming administration will take the necessary steps to restore fiscal sanity. With that, I'd like to recognize the ranking member, Senator Peters.